Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Can You Hear Me podcast. I'm Rob Johnson, president of Rob Johnson Communications.
And I'm Eileen Rochford, CEO of the Harbinger Group, marketing and strategy firm. As regular listeners of Can You Hear Me know, we like to take the various communication techniques that Rob and I are experienced in and show how they can also be effective as leadership tools. So, with that in mind, today we are focusing on the adaptive leader, meeting employees where they are. So, what does that mean? This means that for modern leaders, it's essential to adapt your leadership style to mesh with the people you're managing. Seems obvious, right?
Well, it does seem obvious, but
Right.
it also requires, I think, a little bit of nuance. Because if you're somebody that says, "I'm the leader and they need to come to me," that's fine. But you're
Yeah.
probably likely to get more out of someone if you figure out what their strengths are as leaders and where they're comfortable managing and meet them there. It's not that you have to go all the way to them. It's just let's meet in the middle as opposed to you're coming all the way up to the C suite and I'm the boss or wherever. Let's meet there and I think everybody gets more out of it.
hmm I think today is really going to be kind of a just let's call this an annual checkup, if you will, on
Yeah.
our leadership styles and learn a little bit about the concepts of adaptive leadership. So hopefully, everybody listen with your minds wide open and a lot of honesty with yourself, like I'm going to be doing. So I like to think about this as frequently as I can. Like, all right, what do I need to change? And let's the flexibility that is associated with adaptive leadership is what we're going to explore today together.
Well,
Let's get into that.
what you're also talking about is um, you're talking about self-awareness.
Yeah.
You're in charge, you're the leader, and you I know you're a lifelong learner. You always realize no matter how much I've done and how long I've done it, I can still get better. And that's really what we're trying to kind of challenge people to do here, just to think about things in different ways. So, this isn't just a feel good concept. This, I think, is a leadership necessity. People are different. People have different motivations, different communication styles, different personal and professional challenges. If you're treating everyone the same, you're likely missing the mark and potentially losing your team's engagement, loyalty, and performance. Harvard's Ronald Heifetz, a pioneer of adaptive leadership, describes it as the ability to lead through change by mobilizing people to tackle tough challenges and thrive. But here's the kicker: you need to understand who you're mobilizing to mobilize effectively, right, Eileen?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, it's ridiculous. I think maybe in the 80s it was still okay, maybe even the 90s to think, "Oh, I'm going to go read this leadership book and all I have to do is apply those principles and I'm going to be a great leader. My team's going to fall in behind me and everything's going to be roses and unicorns and rainbows."
Mm.
There's no way today that if you're not paying attention to who you work with, who they are as individuals, what tends to kind of light them up and get them, going, positively with um, energy, focus, drive, that kind of stuff. If you're not paying attention to that, then you're totally missing out on a huge amount of opportunity. So it's that, like, how do you find the ways to understand people as, or your managees, I guess,
Yeah.
your direct reports as individuals, as real human beings. Some people think that there's no place for that at work, but because that's superfluous, that chit chat time um, is actually unproductive and not helpful. But in reality, a minimal amount of time spent getting to understand the folks you work with as truly as human beings, what's important to them, what do they do outside of work, and even at work, what do they treasure in terms of growth, accomplishment? Do they want more time off or do they want more compensation? You see what I mean? Like there's so many different levers basically that we all have inside of us that can help us feel comfortable and be better at the jobs that we do. But as leaders, if we're not taking the time to say, "Oh, I want to understand this person," and making the time, honestly, it's not even about taking; it's making, setting it aside in a concerted way, consistently. And that doesn't mean talking about projects. That doesn't mean talking about roles, responsibilities, job descriptions, all that kind of stuff. I think that it's essential to make the time. Um, you know, one-on-ones may not even be the time to do it. Frankly, I got to be honest. It feels like you got to say, "All right, I'm going to find time when I can either have coffee with this person virtually, when I can have lunch with them, where all you really talk about is um, them, not even you. You're just asking them questions to help get to know them better, which then you can apply when you are actually leading them as individuals. I think that's how I see it. What about you?
I agree with it because I feel like somebody's going to be listening to this and they're going to misinterpret what's being said. This isn't just like touchy feely soft skill stuff.
Right.
And I know some people are going to think, oh gosh, it's that. There we go again. I'm suggesting to you that this is a psychological tool that you have at your disposal. And you can be stubborn and say, my way or the highway, come meet me where I am. Or you can say, how am I going to get the most out of this person? What am I going to do to learn more about them to understand how they tick? So when I meet them where they are, we're meeting at the right place. So I know because there are times on this podcast where we talk about managerial skills relative to this, and it feels like, oh, we're talking about soft skills. We're talking about,
Mm.
you know, cajoling, people and, going light on them and this and that. And it's just not the case. It really is. Are you psychologically brave and astute enough to be able to employ this to make sure you're getting the most out of your people? I like to frame it that way and not the former.
Right. Good. And there's a mountain of research to support the direct business benefits, quite
Oh,
honestly.
for sure.
Um, like the Gallup's, their State of the American Manager report, that found managers who adapt to employees' unique strengths and needs are likelier to have engaged teams. And teams led by highly engaged managers are nearly 60% more likely to be involved themselves. And engagement and involvement leads to better outcomes and all the things that everyone has to measure these days. So it may feel like we're starting with the soft, but we're ending with direct business benefits. And who doesn't want that?
Everybody should want that. I mean, it seems so simple when the words are coming out of our mouths here, Eileen, but
Hmm.
it really does require the ability to step back just a little bit and to look at the 30,000-foot view, which as a leader you should be doing anyway, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And that doesn't just include the tasks at hand.
Mm-mm.
It involves the people who are executing the tasks at
Mm-hmm.
hand, I think.
Yeah. And I think the hardest thing about applying adaptive leadership, honestly, is what you said earlier, which is the self awareness, like recognizing that, well, you know, you as a leader may be driven by achievements. And you would love it if everyone you worked with was wired the exact same way, because then it would just be really easy for you, right?
Too easy.
But
Yeah.
that's not how the world works. It would be so nice, and I think that was what used to drive the whole top down, you know, structure or philosophy at work. People are just like, I don't want to deal with that. I just want it to be easier. We're going to do it my way because I'm successful. Everyone should be like me. Well, I don't know. Today we know that that's not the case. So even when things get super chaotic, and I do feel like the world is really full of friction and chaos and a lot of things that are kind of making us all feel like the work days are longer and harder. And gosh, I don't even have time to get through my own task list, let alone make time to sit down and get to know someone on a personal level when all I want to do is finish my work day. That you can feel that way pretty easily right now. But the self-awareness that I'm talking about, um, you have to force yourself to be self-aware and realize if you're going down that path too much, too often, you got to pull back and make the time again. Even if it feels like you don't have it, it will result in your team being better equipped and set up to help you have to do less if you think about it. So in the long run, it really does have direct benefits to you. If you're the type of person who has to be able to see the direct benefit, to yourself, that's one way to frame it.
Well, if you think about it as, oh gosh, I don't have the energy to do it right now, to do this minor gesture. And then you think about the world as you just described it, which people are feeling overwhelmed. What you might consider is, if I make this small investment here, perhaps down the road, when I really am overwhelmed, somebody's going to pick up the slack because I connected with them in a meaningful way and it didn't cost anything, and it, all things considered, was fairly minor, but it's going to pay off huge dividends. And maybe that person, because they're energized, because they're part of those, 60%, they're going to be more likely to be involved themselves. Maybe they're going to help you in a very meaningful way in some other case down the road,
Yeah.
and where they are taking something off your plate, where they are making a major contribution that is helping your organization out. I would frame it that way, because I know it's like, I'm at
That's
the end of my day.
totally.
I don't really have time for, 6 more minutes to learn more about Eileen. But man, if I did, she's gonna wow me in, I don't know, 2 weeks,
Yeah.
2 months, 6 months. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
possible, but it's
Yeah.
but it's but it's proven. To your point, it's not just us, yeah, flapping our gums here. I mean, this is like got research backing it up, as we've just expressed.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I've personally experienced something that you just described, and I'll just add to your description, which
Hmm.
is sometimes as leaders, you don't really appreciate that you too are going to hit the hard stuff. Like you're going to hit those roadblocks. You're going to feel spent, overwhelmed, and at those moments, you really will need the people who surround you to help, and you may not even see it coming. So I've personally had situations where it just like things just kind of got out of control really fast, and I truly felt like I couldn't even manage like to go to work that day, like or for a couple of days.
Hmm.
And I had team members who just saw it and who stepped in and said, "I got this." You don't and they didn't even ask me to explain it. It was like, "Just go. I'll figure it out when you're ready to come back," which never takes that long. We'll be okay. But it's funny that you say that because it really is interesting as you made me think of that. And as leaders, I think maybe we don't appreciate that it's going to happen to us too. And we do need that support. So that's another reason to get to know people. You're absolutely right.
And who created that culture when that happened to you? Oh,
Well,
what you did?
I don't
Oh
know.
yeah.
I mean, I guess I'm just darn lucky because sometimes
Yeah.
I truly do feel like I'm the leader who's like, I don't have time. I'm so pressed. I'm so whatever. But I guess what it comes down to is if you kind of make the time enough, you don't let too much time pass without connecting, without
Yeah.
caring, without, getting to know people better, especially newer people, you'll be okay. But if you never do it, you're really going to be in trouble someday down the line. That's
Oh
for real.
yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, and I know you're going to get into some of that a little bit later, because there's, as you know, with your workforce being all remote and that sort of thing, I'm teasing forward a little bit to what we're going to talk about. But there are some really, I think, great things that you've employed at the Harbinger Group to kind of get the most out of people. So let's talk about, before we do that, let's talk about practical application, adaptive leadership. This doesn't, so we're not saying you're going to be inconsistent as a leader, or
Mm.
you're going to be playing favorites and somebody else is the favorite and the other person isn't. It means taking time to understand what makes someone tick. Is this employee motivated by recognition? Are they motivated by autonomy? Or do they thrive on structure or need flexibility? I mean, there's all kinds. And that's why you can't you were talking about treating everybody the same. You can't treat everybody the same. And you can't just play favorites and then have every other person who's working hard not get any sort of recognition, because some people do need the recognition. Some people do
Yeah.
want to kind of be left alone. And you know that on the back end, that work is going to be good because that's the way they work. Other people you need to be checking in with regularly because they need the structure. They need to know that the boss is paying attention. And other people are like, listen, I thrive when I have flexibility, when I'm not, on task, same time, same place every day. It doesn't look the same all the time. So these are all really important points to bring up.
Hmm. And what I'm hearing you say, or what's popping into my head as you say that, Rob, is so how do you do it? How do you figure it out? What each person, kind of what makes them tick? Do they want more compensation? Do they want more projects to lead independently? Because sometimes when you ask people, they don't know for real, especially when
Yeah.
they're younger. I've
Well, yeah,
personally
young workers,
experienced
that's a
that
whole other
too.
conversation because they're
Yeah,
they're like a ball of clay. They don't even know
right.
who they are yet.
But I say especially intentionally because this is not exclusive, the not knowing to just, younger professionals.
Oh, sure,
It's
sure.
shocking. Even, I have met plenty of professionals who, mid 30s, 40s, and who kind of come into our circle, and I realize they really don't know what they want. They don't, but they should be helped along, to figure
Oh,
that out.
absolutely.
Yeah. So in
Agreed.
those situations, I think I did what we do in advertising marketing. It's a little bit of A/B testing, just kind of playing with. All right, this time I'm going to try recognition and see how they
See how
respond.
that goes. Yeah, yeah. Let's
Yeah,
let's try this on for size.
this time I'm going to try. Hey, would you? You were great on this, and you've been really going at it for a whole month to make this happen. Here's a day off, and then to see, does that you know really strike the right chord, and do they come back
Yeah.
energized, and
And if they
or
didn't,
if
here's
they
the thing:
didn't.
if they don't, and I'll let you finish that thought. If they don't,
Yeah,
you've also learned something very important. So you're sitting there
yeah,
thinking, what motivates them? But also, when you figure out what doesn't motivate them, you're like, well, I'll just scratch that off the list, and I won't do
that's
that
right.
again. So
Little
anyway,
A/B
please continue.
testing.
Yeah,
Yeah. So that's a good way to do it if you're if someone's a little harder to get to know. Um, and I will also say, right now, social situations for many, weirdly, we just got out of practice. So it's gonna take a little bit of consistent effort of, oh, let's have that lunch, or let's have that coffee, or let's talk about what you did this weekend so I can, as like kind of a back doorway to learn about them. Like, as in, how do they spend their time? And what do they seem to enjoy based on their facial expressions and
right.
body language and things as they're talking about it. If they're talking about yard work and they look miserable, then you're like, okay, well, they didn't enjoy that.
Yeah,
Right.
let's
It's pretty
let's move
obvious.
on. Let's move on.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I think that we gave some good thoughts there in terms of how to explore and apply the concept of A/B testing when it comes to
Agreed.
people who don't really know what
Sure.
motivates them. But let's delve into how this, we have a huge portion of the workforce still who we're hybrid, remote work, and how that, or those elements rather, have changed the equation in terms of leadership. Because honestly, it was a lot easier being in the office and observing people's patterns and habits, and where would they like to go to lunch, and who did they talk about the most in the chit chat in the hallway time, that kind of stuff. It was easier, right,
Hmm.
to pick up on cues and get to know people. So now you have to be really like overly intentional, and kind of over communicate, one of your favorite things.
Yes.
um, Things like making one-on-one time happen, they become way more critical. So we were alluding to some of that. Like, hey, you have to say, hey, do you want to have coffee for me to open up your day, or with me to open up your day? Ask them, yeah, what'd you do last night? Or that's a good time for chit chat, even if it's 15 minutes, right?
Right.
Anybody can do that. So find the ways to establish some one-on-one time, and don't be, pelting them with questions, but maybe just listen. Read up on some of the better exploratory questions out there that people tend to respond to. Because, as we've said in a few different discussions, about leadership adaptation here on the show. If you're considering this optional and something that you can just bypass because it's uncomfortable for you, you're losing out, and that's not just not going to go well. So I can relate to this as somebody, I've led a remote team for a long time, like 2 decades, and a little more than that. And we were fully remote almost the entire time. There was a very short period where we weren't. So realizing it's beautiful remote work. It's beautiful because it creates so much more efficiency and puts time back in people's lives and lots of things. But it does put the emphasis on productivity and just getting the day done. And that erodes connection if you're not if you intentional, if you don't put effort into it. So I think my reminder is just um, look at how you structure if you are fully remote. Find times, even if your managers aren't doing it, try and connect with the people you work with. Ask your manager proactively for some, have coffee once or twice a month for 15 minutes at the start of a day virtually and just BS.
Yeah.
So
And
find
don't
ways. I think it can go both ways. It doesn't have to be leaders down either. I'll just note it's everybody has the ability to foster the kind of culture that they want. So
And you were talking about it earlier about just getting on with somebody and just talking about stuff, not
yeah,
even relative to the project or the project at hand or the task right ahead of you. And I know that you all regularly at the Harbinger Group employ something like this where it's just about connecting. Why don't you tell people about that a little bit?
yeah, and we bake it in like in multiple ways. So I wouldn't say there isn't one time where
All
that's
right, sure.
just what we do, but we bake in being together with purpose and all the time. So here are the ways we do that. We start every day with a morning huddle. It's usually about 15 to 20 minutes. And it's not just I'm going to report on what I'm doing today. It's also okay. What are the hurdles we're seeing? Who's got a roadblock? But we always open up with like 5 minutes of true just chit chat. If you look at the transcripts, it's funny. It's like, oh, I had this hilarious thing happen to me this morning, or I totally spilled coffee down my shirt. Oh my god, or I fell when I was running. Scraped me on my, or I fell on the sidewalk. My whole knee is scraped, and the saga. It's sharing is what it is, and
You're
those
going to get the
little
job
bits.
done, but
Yes,
you're also making that connection with each other, which is going to bolster the team, which is going to help you be more productive, presumably.
yeah, and there are moments that there are opportunities really to demonstrate like interest, empathy,
Sure.
learn something about people you work with. Like we always learn the funniest things unexpectedly about each other in some of those morning huddles. I find the end of the day checkouts, they're a little more all business. I think people are just spent,
Right.
but we do that every day too. Um, so it's the coming together, the being together, the connecting concept so that you don't feel like you're just like on an island.
Right.
Is that's what you have to be really intentional about that as a remote organization. And those are two ways that we do it. The other big way is um, once a month we have like a full day together, and we try to make that in person. They're nice when they're in person. I think the times when they work really well in person are when perhaps the schedule isn't as packed and we don't have some mission critical things immediately ahead of us. So you're not going to find as many of those. There's 12 opportunities a year. There's probably only going to be about 4 or 5 where you're going to have less packed days, um, and that's fine because it's the whole day.
Yeah.
So it's the intentional opportunities to connect and being okay with just as you would when you're in if you were in an office. There's always the banter, as they say. So
Those are really great tools. I'm glad that you shared them because I
yeah,
think they're very important and it is intentional on your part and it is going the extra mile and that's what we keep talking about. And I
yeah,
think that we're showing people that you can do little bite-sized pieces of intentionality and as you add them all up they become something significant. So I think that's really what we want people to realize is you don't have to go reinvent your management style or your office
yeah,
or your firm. But if you do little things, and they will add up, and they will be positive, and they will be a value add, hopefully, you
They're
know.
like snacks, little
Yes,
snacks throughout the day.
bite
That's
size.
it. Yep.
One of the best tools that I've seen is in this whole discussion is the situational leadership model that was developed by Ken Blanchard and Paul Hersey. It suggests that adapting leadership based on two variables, the person's competence and commitment. So, in other words, a new hire might need high direction, while a seasoned pro may need occasional check ins. And we touched upon that a little bit earlier, but I think it's also worth repeating and kind of putting into a little bit different context here.
Mm, yeah. It is funny when you think about it. Competence and commitment, if even if you have a younger person who like their competence isn't fully formed, it's fresh, but it's still there's foundational competence there. You wouldn't have hired them
Sure. Of
otherwise.
course. Yeah.
But if their commitment is super high, that is the lever that you can push.
Right.
See what I
Are,
mean?
are
Like
you
they're
an eager learner, or are you,
yeah.
I know everything? Right. That makes
Yes.
a difference.
Yes. Totally. Yeah. You see that a lot. And how to kind of reward competence, if you will, but also challenge them to be curious and continue to expand in competence. That's another thing. And some people really are driven by curiosity. So giving them the opportunity of here, this take these, days or half day professional time.
Hmm.
And all you're going to do is take that course, learn that, go to that conference. Some people really do come back from those experiences super energized. So you just got to keep up the conversation to figure it out. That's it.
Yes, we
That's
do.
it. I
Yes, we
think that is
do.
what we are saying.
I think
So,
you're
all
right.
right, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna say that if you're listening, and we hope there's lots of people doing that, here's the challenge that we're gonna throw out. Pick one person of the people that you manage and ask yourself, what's their communication style? Maybe ask, what do they need from me to do their best at work? And then just act on it. Don't wait. You don't need to have any formal
No,
process.
no, just do it.
Just challenge yourself to figure that out. Just pick one person, and that's progress. That's growth right there. That is a leadership snack right there. um, but shift something, I think, is what we're saying, in how you lead them this week. Don't wait. Now's the time, because, like with anything, the more you build this muscle, the stronger your team's going to get, and the stronger your collective outcomes will be together, and that will feel great. And we'll just conclude by saying, as we mentioned before, adaptive leadership isn't soft. That's leading from a place of wisdom, and it's today essential. You can't skip it. Everybody grows. People grow, they struggle, they change, and we as leaders, we got to grow along with them.
I mean, yeah. I mean, the everything keeps moving. It's not, as you said, it's not a static thing. Because there's evolution, and there's growth, and there are issues that you just pointed out, and you need to be able to follow that piece of the puzzle for
Yeah.
for each of the people that are working for you. And if you
Yeah.
do that, you're going to have better outcomes.
Everything will click. It'll feel great.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's about it for us today. It's another edition of Can You Hear Me? I'm Rob Johnson. If you would like to comment on the podcast or suggest a topic, please contact us at our Can You Hear Me podcast page on LinkedIn.
Yes, that is the best place to find us. And I'm Eileen Rochford. If you like what you heard today, please consider giving our show, Can You Hear Me, a positive review wherever you get your podcasts, like Apple, Spotify, whatever, because your reviews will help other listeners find our show. Thanks for listening.